Hello, and thank you so much for hitting play on this episode of the Rock the Ripple podcast. It is so good to be here with you as always. Now, before we dive into today's awesome chin wag, I have to let you know that I don't know if it was Mercury retrograde or what was going on, but it seems that my computer or my mic had some sort of brain fart at the start of this episode. So the audio just went all a bit skew with. Gratefully, only at my end. So not for the amazing speaker's end, just my end. So aside from pulling out some of my hair, I have done what I can to repair the audio so that it is easy to listen to still. It will sound a little bit different at the start. So I just wanted to give you the heads up. So if you're wondering, why does that sound weird? Now you know. So, and funnily enough, I started recording this message to tell you what was going on, and that didn't work. So who knows? Who knows? The joys of technology. Yeah. So anyway, thank you again for being here. And if, by the way, if you love this episode, as always, leave a comment, share, subscribe, leave a rating wherever you're listening to the podcast. It always helps and it's always awesome. So, but enough about all of that. Thank you again for being here. And now over to the episode.
Rock the Ripple. Rock the Ripple. Rock the Ripple. The Rock the Ripple podcast with Narita McInnes.
Let's do this. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Rock the Ripple podcast. I'm your host, Narita McInnes. It is so awesome to be here with you as always. And today is another very exciting day because I am joined by a very special guest. He is a holistic health practitioner and mindset coach who knows a lot about many things, let's be honest, from law, culture, sociology, human health, and spirituality. He is the co-founder of the Living Free movement and the founder of Tom Barnett TV. He is, of course, the one and only Tom Barnett. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Narita. Good to see you.
Oh, it's so good to be here with you. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to have a chin wag with me today. Now, obviously, there's a lot of people who know who you are and know your story. But for those who don't, maybe do you want to give a bit of a background as to who is Tom Barnett and how you got to be doing what you do today, and maybe just a bit of your story because it is a very interesting one.
Okay, I'll give a shorter version. So I was just kind of normalish childhood. I was pretty well educated. Wanted to go to college to do like academic stuff, but I was really into sports, so I wanted to try to combine the two. And then throughout this time, I was kind of figuring out the system and getting a bit angry with everything. And then I got really sick in my early 20s once I dropped out of college and was pursuing an athletic and business career. And then all of the medical, because I was studying biomedical science, and then when I got sick, none of that helped me out. So I was having to really look into different avenues. I found Paul Chek and the idea of holistic health. I found Rudolf Steiner, I found Anton Béchamp, and I was what medicine would call immunosuppressed at that time. And so I was, I was really just in a bad way and chasing a lot of the knowledge that I had been given through professors and what have you. None of it helped. So I had to look for these alternative means. And so I had to experiment on myself in many ways. And I came to the conclusion around 2005 that you can't catch viruses, that they're not even real in the first place. That sat with me for ages, but nothing really happened with that. Then I became like a photographer and filmmaker after I was a holistic health practitioner. And then 2020 rolled around and that's when everything changed. So that's when I brought back out what I'd been speaking about for a long time. And then had to leave the photography and filmmaking side aside for a while and started Living Free movement with Dave. And then these days I help people learn about natural law and how that applies to their rights and freedoms, how it applies to health and their body, and how it applies to how we interact with not just ourselves, but each other and the world around us. And that's what I share now.
That's fantastic. I remember listening to you talk about your story somewhere, and I can't remember where. There was a time when you were living out of home and you were like really connecting with nature and really learning. And obviously you're very academic and you're very switched on and you know so many things. I know that people come to you for so many different questions and answers that they want to get. But did you find when you were doing that time, when you were out in nature, did you find that I think you might have even said it, that that's where you got a lot of your answers, that a lot of that wisdom came through to you? You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. I wouldn't call it wisdom. I mean, I just got a lot of insights for me personally. Like, what's an insight and wisdom for me doesn't necessarily apply to anyone else, but that's kind of like where a lot of it happened, because I had to separate a lot from the world, the construct that I had of the world. So what I am, who I am, what the world is, how I fit into it. And that really got broken down a lot during that time. And the funny thing is that before I knew a lot about, natural law and ID and how you're not the name and that's the fiction and all that, before I knew any of that, going for periods of time, like pretty much a year at a time, and I've done that a few times, without ever seeing my reflection was really, really interesting, because I never got a sense of self. Like, you don't really realize it, but pretty much every day you'll see your own reflection. You either look in a mirror, like in your house, or you'll like look at your reflection in the rearview mirror in a car, or you'll take a photo of yourself or see a photo of yourself or something like that. And I dropped right out of, I didn't see myself for a long time. So that was really interesting, because it dissolved the sense of identity. And I got, really well connected to, because I was sleeping on the earth basically. Each night I was waking up and going to sleep in the bush, spending a lot of time out in nature. And it really helped me to connect to a part of myself that was way more real than what was before. And it really helped shift my direction insofar as, like, what am I even doing in this world? So that definitely helped a lot. I don't know if it would help everybody, but it helped me.
That was for a couple of years, did you say? Yeah?
Yeah, so the longest period I did was 12 months, and then I'd end up back in someone's house on the floor or something, and then I'd go out again. So it happened pretty much just naturally each time. And by naturally, I mean I got given by life a decision to make. And it was like, I could either go in this direction or I could just drop out again and go in this direction. It's like, I either had to like choose if I was going to stay in the same area or move house again, or, take a job that I didn't particularly want to do, like a soul destroying, like telemarketing. I did like, I don't know how many different types, maybe somewhere between 5 and 10 without counting different telemarketing jobs. And because I was really sick at the time, that was the only job that I could really sustain myself with at the time. Like, I didn't have the energy to do physical work anymore. And it was just like, that's brutal work. But not putting it down for anyone that is a telemarketer by trade. Like, some of it wasn't that bad, and some of it was, I actually did pretty well at it, especially in the beginning. But after a while, you just, especially if you've got a creative and active mind, it's just kind of like, you get to a point where you're like, I could think of many better things to do than this. And one of them's like, maybe jump off a freaking bridge or something. It's like, just terrible. But that was for me, and I'm saying that for anyone else. So if I had to sustain rent and food and like the system life by doing that, or just go, you know what, I just can't do that, and I'm just going to go live in the bush in a tent. And then I chose, that was what I mean by, it was like a chosen path because life gave me kind of options. Now what I know though, could I go back? I know that there's way more options than that, but I wouldn't change having those experiences. So I did that 3 times. Minimum time was 8 months and maximum time was 12 months at a time.
Wow. Well, that's the thing. You learn so much about yourself through those times where you're faced with those choices, and you get to go either way, and there's always more than one choice. But like you said, in hindsight, you had more options, but now, in hindsight, back then.
Yeah, but what it was as well was a sense of self-worth, which I didn't have. So I knew everything was wrong with the world, and I thought I was right about everything, but I still didn't have any answers. So I couldn't explain things. I couldn't even explain it to myself. I just had the anger and the frustration. And so it was easier to avoid. And that's a tendency that I developed through my childhood, which was to just disassociate, disconnect, and avoid, which is not a healthy thing to do by any means. So what I mean is that, like, having learned how to deal with those things and be present and show up more, back then I didn't have that. So I took the easy way out. Like, a lot of people thought it took a lot of courage, and I'm like, no, that was the cowardly way out, was to just drop out and just not participate in life. But at the same time, it was super valuable, So I was like, it's just important to, I think, acknowledge that it wasn't necessarily the strongest thing to do. It was kind of in many ways the weakest thing to do, but it did build strength and character in doing it. So like, all balances out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess the people who see that as taking courage are people who might not be able to do that. And their story is different. So what it looks like for them is different too, isn't it?
Yeah, like a lot of people would never do that. Like a lot of people, it's their greatest fear to end up homeless. Like it's the worst thing. And I always find if you have a super strong polarity or charge with something, it's something you really need to explore, because I've been there so many times that it just doesn't faze me at all. Like I have no fear of loss of a house, a car, a bank account, because I've gone without all of those for such a long period of time. And not only learned that it was okay, but you can grow and thrive and become wealthier in other ways through that. Like when you don't fear it and have such a charge with it, you're very, very unlikely for life to need to deal with you that, because you chose to deal with it anyway. So there's so many people, like I feel sorry for them, even if they got heaps of money, they fear that constantly. Like it's always there, like this monkey on their back that never leaves. And I'm like, what a terrible way to go through life. Like an inherent underlying fear of loss, and that's where your safety and security in that is. Now, having said that, now that I have a partner and I want to bring kids into the world, that's different from being a single man who can pretty much do whatever he wants. It doesn't affect you. But at the same time, even going into family life, not having that as a base fear means that the family will feel more safe and more secure, because on many, many levels, especially kids and women, of course, as well, you can pick up on all these little subtleties. Like, if your man's stressed, if dad's like not really confident in what he's doing, even if he appears it, like you can feel those underlying things. So in many ways, it's definitely a healthier thing to not carry those underlying fears.
And what a gift that you're going to be able to give to your family when you have your family, like that is huge, because so many families and so many people can have, and even if it's not conscious, it's the energetic vibe that they've felt growing up is that they haven't had that confidence. They haven't had that ability to feel safe in their own home because they don't have that energetic structure around them. Do you see that a lot as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I do. Absolutely. And a lot of, like I've spoken about this a lot of times, but a lot of men get into I think it's a trap where men think that they're providing because they can put a roof over their family's head and put food on the table. But there's many, many, many kinds of food that we feed on. And while kids might be getting physical food, then maybe missing out on the huge amount of nourishment that they're meant to have. So they do grow up underfed, undernourished. And the man makes the mistake of thinking that if he prioritizes the kid and he works so hard and he can give them food and then bikes and skateboards and whatever else, that's what they need. But that's not what they need at all. And so they're actually missing out on all the things that they really need. So if the man can reprioritize his life to put his partner, his connection with his creator first, and then his relationship with his partner, and then the kids, and then work, which is the opposite order that most men in society, I think, have insofar as what I see, then things can change a lot just by reprioritizing what you're devoting to in life. And therefore, even though the kids are like down the list, in the way that the natural law really works is that that's the natural order of things. So that provides the kids exactly what they need, rather than putting them first. They're putting work first, and then the kids, and then your partner, and then wondering why the kids grow up angry, they go off the rails, they get blue hair or piercings through whatever by the teenage years and that, and then they turn into a hermaphrodite or something, and you're never going to bring kids into the world. It's it's because of that. That's part of the reason, because inherently the world isn't actually that safe insofar as it doesn't come from government, it doesn't come from TV, school, teachers, any of that stuff. So if it's not provided at home, the kids will go trying to find that through pop culture, society, what the government says, the confidence that other people bring to the world. Yes, you are this, it is okay to be this. Meanwhile, they're pushing agendas and whatever. And it's really easy, or they'll connect more to musicians than their parents or things like that. That's how easy it is. And I know that because when I grew up, my dad, because of the way he grew up, he's never felt true safety and security in this world. And so he brought that into our family. He grew up without a father. It's just his path. And everything was scarce, we've got to be food could run out at any time. And we grew up on bread and butter and pudding and or whatever. And we should be grateful for. And I'm what are you talking about? You can see the world around you. It's food literally grows out of the dirt anywhere, even through the cracks in the road. What are you talking? You kind of knew that as a kid, but my family instilled this lack and the opposite of abundance, and essentially a scarcity mentality. So then that crept into everything that had to do with money and finances, food, like love, like anything. It was all scarce. So I had to break through that by, I think, dropping out of that whole, my connection to any of those things like money and food and whatever, and just had to fend for myself. And through that, I learned that it's not scarce and it is abundant, and everything's there for the taking if you create what you're here to create. And so that's, anyway, like long story short, I'm glad I went through all that, because now I have way more just inner and innate feeling of everything's okay.
Yeah.
And no matter what, I'll be able to roll with life and it's going to be good.
And I can totally relate to that too, because it's very similar in my family as well growing up. And, you know, the whole money doesn't grow on trees and all that sort of stuff. And as a little kid, you can see like you said, there's fruit growing on the plant or there's stuff growing in the ground. And so it doesn't make sense. But then you grow up with those patterns and programs, don't you? And you take them on board. And so you believe them because that's what you're surrounded with all the time. And then the journey is to then unravel and peel away all the layers that aren't really you, that aren't true. And then you can look back and be so grateful for it because you've been able to learn those lessons and you've been able to overcome them. And maybe those lessons wouldn't be there for you if you hadn't gone through that. Well, I'm pretty sure that's the case in most cases, don't you think?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I always think that like it's really important not to carry a victim mentality about anything that's happened to you in life, because it's all been happening for you rather than to you, is the way I like to put it. And when you can realize that, you can realize the blessing and the gift that's there. But it's, while you have victim mentality, you're never going to receive like this gift that's meant to be yours, to be able to alchemize and turn into something, you know, amazing for the world. But even that idea can put pressure on people. So they're like, oh, well, what if I don't know? What if I fail in doing that? So again, it's like this neutering of themselves and their potential. But I just like to think, you know, like I'd rather try and fail in trying to reach my potential than just sit like as a rock or a piece of plastic and never do anything.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. But do you think as well, because I've been thinking about this lately, do you think there is a time and a place to be the victim, to sit in that space and honor the place that you were the victim? Do you know what I mean? And then to overcome it?
I get what you mean. I still don't think victim so I think what you're saying is, just correct me if I'm wrong, but like there's this tendency in like new agey sort of stuff to just like almost pretend stuff didn't happen and it doesn't matter, so it carries no weight and therefore no value. Like, yeah, I got abused and shit, but like whatever, it's just is what it is, but I'm just going to become a millionaire through multi-level marketing or just something like that. It's kind of like ignoring it isn't the healthy thing to do.
Yeah.
So I like the word that you use, which is honoring, but I still, maybe it's just semantics and like different meanings of words, but I still don't think that a victim is for me, it's not anyway. For me, it's like, this happened to me and I acknowledge it, and I acknowledge the parts that built sadness in me and the parts that built anger in me and the parts that built this in me, and I still carry grief here, but I'm not a victim to it, you know what I mean? It's just that it's there, and I honor that it's there, and I honor the path that offers me to be able to move through to create gold from that, you know what I mean? So I think we're probably talking about the same stuff. I just don't use the word victim because I still don't think that, even though there were things that built those repressions or emotions in me, I'm still not a victim to it. I don't see it, but I do 100% agree with like not just like bypassing that, like as if it's not there and it didn't matter, because it does matter. And as soon as you say something doesn't matter, then it has no value, because it doesn't, like, the words mean a lot. So when you say it doesn't matter, like this is made of matter and I'm made of matter, so if we don't matter, then you know what I mean? It's not even in the world, essentially. So bypassing is not a healthy thing to do by any means, for sure.
Yeah. You got to the point that I was trying to make. So thank you. Yeah. So you said that beautifully, and it's honoring those parts of you that have built you. And like you said before, everything happens for us. And if we don't see it that way, then we're in that victim mindset, aren't we?
Yeah.
Totally.
But feeling it is important too.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people are in such a hurry to like heal and move through stuff, but a lot of the things, like, in all honesty, some things you transcend 100%. I don't want to like give the impression that doesn't happen, but also some things you just don't. They're just always going to be there. Like if you got abandoned and then smacked around and then raped and like other stuff. Like, do you really heal from all that in your lifetime? Some of it, like everything has potentialities to be absolutely anything. So yes, you do. But other times, like there's going to be some sadness and anger that are just there for your whole life. But it's like, what do you do with that is the question, not is it there or not? Because I think people are like, oh, sadness bad, no sadness good, like right, wrong, as in like it's all got to get out of you because it's wrong or bad. But it's like a lot of that stuff allows you to, for example, people that have been through a lot have more capacity for empathy and compassion towards others. Generally, people who are innately or become healers, when I've observed people, I don't know if you've seen I call them comedy sheets, bits that I've done on my live streams where I'm talking about healers and stuff, how like just the look in people's eyes, like the people that really have true depth in my experience, I'm saying this is 100% truth, but in my experience, depth carries a level of, like there's so many layers, and within those layers is an inherent sadness that's never going to leave that person. But then behind that sadness is acceptance, and then behind that is a level of humor to do with like, but there's always something in the eyes that carries depth, and it indicates how deep the beingness goes in that individual. It's never just like, hey, Narita, we're all healed and shit. I don't feel sad at all. So there's none of that. In people who are true, like people who have true gifts and true healing abilities, I'm just saying again from my experience, I've always seen that. So I don't believe that in those people, and I know people that are in their 60s and 70s who I would put in that category, I don't see them ever losing that sadness of what happened to them in this life or past lives or whatever. But there's something beautiful about it too, and it's because they're not a victim to it. They have reached acceptance of it. They're working with it, and it's working with them and through them. They don't necessarily feel depressed or anything like that, but there's just this beautiful sadness that goes in line with how they're able to connect with other parts of life that other people just can't. So, short story there is that I just don't think everything's meant to be quote unquote healed. I think in that use of that term, the healing is you're not a victim to it anymore, but it's still there. So it doesn't rule you. You now get to work with it and work with the alchemy that's available there and all that. So
yeah, dance with all the parts. Yeah, absolutely. I love that you said that. Yeah, I mean, there's so much there. I think because a lot of the work that you do, because yes, you talk about so many things that you can help people with and how to get out of fines and all that sort of stuff. And I know you've said this too, unless we're doing the inner work, unless we're being able to look at ourselves and be able to stand in our power, I guess, and all that sort of stuff. Some of it, like everything has its place, of course, but if we're not in tune with who we are and we're externalizing everything, we're not really, we're not balanced, are we?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, 100%. There's so many things, but that's also the conditioning. It's like the conditioning is that, like, life's almost scripted for us. This is what you do. And if you're from this culture, this is what you do. And you end up here and you have these things and you leave it to them and you do this and you do that. It's kind of like it's very scripted. Whereas a lot of the people that end up being the most inspiring in life are the ones that have kind of like, they become drifters or, scoundrels or like those sorts of terms, which again is probably just another script they're living out. But at the same time, that inspires people because it's different. It breaks them out of a mold. But I just think like the more things that there are to embrace, the better. Like the more whole we become.
Absolutely. Do you feel like we chose to be here at this time, Tom?
Yep, 100%.
Yeah. You chose to be you. Hey, me?
Yeah, do you believe that?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Yeah, absolutely. I think it makes sense. It's a knowingness for me. Like, is it a knowingness for you as well? Like just a deep sort of innate thing? Yeah.
Yeah, but not initially. That's the thing. Like when I was living in victimhood, I didn't feel that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. But moving through that became, like you said, a knowing. It's just kind of like, I know that A, I chose to be here, and B, for this particular time. So therefore, when you come at it from that perspective, it's like, I'm here for this. Like, it doesn't matter what happens in the world, lockdowns or a digital currency, this or like whatever things people are scared of. I'm like, oh no, wait, I'm here for this, which then makes it exciting. I get to be a creator in this iteration of timeline that we're in. I get to like I have a role to play. Whereas if you don't feel that, then yeah, you can feel like a victim, and therefore you're kind of like sitting back, almost like watching a movie play out, and you're like, oh, this is the scene when I just have to get spanked by something. Ugh. And you kind of like, you have that kind of like, well, this sucks. But I like that but you're not watching it, you're participating, which means you can rewrite that scene. Instead of getting spanked, you can be like, you can alchemize that to something else. You can do the spanking if that's what you want to do, but you could also have to be no spanking in that scene. It could be something different. You grow flowers or something. Like, I'll just, whatever. But if you're here for it, you're here to meet it, and you're here to like work with it and then create something with it. I can't tell you how much more joyful that makes life and exciting, that you actually have no fear then of anything that quote unquote they are going to do, which is what I think a lot of people are very, very preoccupied with. So either they're what some people call like NPCs or whatever, where they are just watching a movie play out and they're just like an extra, which means like, do this, do that, get off set now. You don't get to eat lunch now. The actors do, like, you're an extra, do what you're told. And they accept that by way of offer, acceptance, and an agreement is formed. That's their life. And then you have, the more you get into it, you might become like quote unquote awake. So now you're like, oh shit, I'm in a movie, but it's still all happening to you now. You're like, I don't want to be an extra. I'm not acting. And you just start to get frustrated and angry with it. But then as you move through it, you realize, oh no, wait, I'm actually like pretty much the producer of this, or at least a co-producer. So now I can choose how things operate. I can choose which parts of the scene I interact with, or I'll choose a different scene. I'll write a different scene, or I'll just take a break over here and let that happen over there. Like whatever, you just got a lot more fluidity with life. And it's also like you wake up going, oh shit, like what could this be today? Not what's going to happen today, but what can this be?
Yeah.
And again, that carries a level of responsibility, which a lot of people don't like. So they would choose, like in the Matrix movie, to just go, oh, whoa, no, I'm not writing anything today. Like, I'll just go over there and be an extra, because then I don't have to think.
Yeah.
And I'll just be told what to do. And as long as I do what I'm told, I get to sleep over here, I get to eat over here, and everything's good. That's like a lot of people's lives. So I just think, this kind of message is more for those that might be in that in-between stage, to realize that you actually have a lot of choice. And then these get really exciting. With responsibility comes freedom. But that does carry somewhat of a burden, because it means that it's like a push bike. It's not going to go anywhere unless you pedal it. So some people don't want to pedal it. They are happy to just, be taken for a ride, and wherever it goes, that's cool. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way, either.
Yeah.
It's just, you kind of got to figure out who you are in this life. And, are you a creator, or are you a passenger? And there's nothing wrong with being a passenger. But I think there comes to a point where people have to make a decision. Am I going to be a passenger, or am I going to be a creator? Because the passenger life is relatively easy, but you'll never, ever, ever reach your potential. You're going to have to go around again and again and again until you start reaching your potential, start figuring out the part of you that is here to create, to be part of life, not just like a passenger within it. But there's still nothing wrong with it. You can always choose that. I just think that middle ground is where you start to get really, really depleted, because you're neither a passenger nor a creator. So you're constantly being pulled in different directions. You feel everything's against you. You can't find your footing in life. So yeah, you kind of just got to choose. And you can also, I believe, go back and forth. So you might choose to be a creator, and then you're like, shit, this is hard, I'll be a passenger. Then you're like, I'm not being fulfilled in life, so I'll be a creator. Shit, it's really hard, I'll be a passenger. This isn't fulfilling. I think you can flip back and forth, but I just know from a lot of experience, but mostly observation, that the worst thing is to just not choose one or the other, and to judge one or the other, and just realize either way is okay. But I know without a doubt that the most fulfilling way of being is to choose that creation side and to take responsibility. With that comes freedom, but it's also a lot of work. And I just see that that's like a general law or rule of life, that there's no free lunch, but you get to create the most magical, amazing lunch that you can possibly dream of if you choose to be on that side.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel like I mean, because the world is made up of so many people, there are people, I mean, do you think so as well, that are supposed to be passengers in this lifetime? I mean, I used to have a joke with a friend of mine, and it's because I heard it from somewhere else, and he would talk about his mate that just would do nothing. He'd just like eat ice cream every day, just, sit back, watch the Simpsons, do nothing else. And I said, well, look, maybe he's just having a lifetime off. Like, he's having a lifetime off, and maybe that's his role. And I think he might have even told him, and he ended up like actually starting running and doing all this stuff and joining him and stuff. But maybe that's the case. Like, I mean, if there's balance, we've got to have both sides of the coin, don't we? Even though we do have choice. And yeah, do you think so?
Yeah, 100%. Like, but those people aren't even going to have this conversation. And that's what I mean. It's like, not only is that okay, it's like, I believe it's part of the design of things. Like, you have to have reference point, all right? So like, we do live in, whether you like it or not, a world of duality in this realm. So for there to be, happiness, there's got to be sorrow. Like, otherwise, what's happy or what's sorrow without the other side? And to be on the path of like remembering who you are, you have to be able to know what it's like to forget. Yeah. To remember, you have to also be able to forget, right? So here's a lot of people who haven't even clued on to even, so they're like reference points. But the other thing about it, and the reason I'll never judge people like that as being less than, is that they're often the nicest people. Like, if you need a hand with something, they'll just drop what they're doing. And they're like, sure, like, do you need a hand? Like, so I had this conversation with somebody last night. They're like, there's an older guy, and he was talking about his son, and his son's he's trying to have a lot of these conversations with his son, especially with things like medical choices, whatever, over the last few years. And he's just like, he's just not even really in a wavelength or a bandwidth to even he's just not interested. There's no interest in it. So when, for example, he was talking about because he was in Maui at the time, he was talking about the fires. He's like, immediately he knew that was about a land grab, right? So he's starting to try to educate his son, and the son's just like, Dad, can we just talk about how we can go and help some people? You know what I mean? So it's like, it's such a beautiful thing. It's still, while somebody might be an NPC, so to speak, it doesn't mean that they don't have God in them. You know what I mean? It's like, they're still compassionate, loving. They're just not interested in this sort of stuff, and that's totally fine. That's their life. And they'll often do, like, I say this a lot. I'm kind of hard on truthers sometimes, but I'm like, a lot of the times those NPCs will be doing more for the world than most of the truthers put together, because they're just looking for what they can do next to help someone or something in the world, rather than everyone's got to know how the government's this corrupt thing of like, you have to know and you have to know. It's like, but what good are you doing in the world in that process if that's all you live for every day? Whereas this guy over here, he kind of doesn't give a shit about that stuff. He's really more concerned with, how can he make the world a better place? What can he do for his neighbor that's going to enrich their life today? Because telling people about pedophiles being everywhere, that doesn't enrich people's lives in any way, shape or form, especially when you can't do anything about it. It breeds disempowerment. There's like a learned helplessness in that. So unless you can do something with it or about it, like, what good is it going to do? Like, aren't you better off learning how to do some carpentry to help somebody like fix their shed so it doesn't leak water, so now they can do better things with their tools or machinery to like grow a food garden or look after some kids in other, like, whatever. Like, there's so many better things you can do with your life than be preoccupied with like the corruption in the government or some people's whole lives are dedicated towards that. And it's like, at the end of the day, I think when they get to that reckoning stage, they're like, what did I do with my life? Like, what good was that? And the guys that aren't interested in that sort of stuff, when their reckoning comes, they're like, I really did the best I could to help my fellow man. And I just think they're going to be happier at their end of their life or in that passing over kind of phase. I don't know that that's true. This is what I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, like, that's where it comes down to discernment for people for when they are interacting with people. Like, some people are open to conversations that will, go here, there and everywhere. And then there's the people that aren't, and that's okay. Like, neither is better or worse. It's just different, isn't it?
Yep. So yeah, I come down to that all the time. Just that.
Yeah. And something that you always say, and you've already said it today, is that everything's always an offer. It's an offer. You get to choose. Like, do you want to speak a bit more about that? It's sort of pretty much that, isn't it? You get to choose. There's an offer, and you choose which way you want to go.
Yeah, there's always a choice. So it is a little bit more detailed because some people can't. So saying this, I can't remember who I was saying this to the other day. Monica we did an Instagram live, but basically, everything's an offer is what I've learned to be a fundamental or natural law. It just is it's part of the way this place is designed. Everything's an offer. So the way that works in commercial terms is you might want to do work for me or I'll do work for you. I would tell you what I would do and quote you a price. You would either say no to that or say yes to that, or you would negotiate that. Either way, it boils down to everything's an offer, and then we form agreements either by way of saying, no, we're not having any business together. That's an agreement. Or yes, let's do business together. That's an agreement. Or I do want to do business with you, but on these terms instead. And then you would go back and forth and you form an agreement. So when you can see it like that, you also see that everything's a choice. And then therefore we have a choice in everything that has ever happened. And then that is another way to remove victimhood and victim consciousness. But what happens is that I find most people can contextualize everything as an offer up to a certain point. So what I mean by that is you could see that from a commercial perspective, like I just described, plumbing or like, graphic design or something. But then what about something more like, what about, I don't know, like a baby being stillborn, or your child is 3 and has leukemia, or, like something like that. At some point, everyone has their ceiling of, not everybody, I mean, most people have a ceiling of being able to comprehend everything being an offer. And you saw that in the last few years, right? It's like, oh, I have to do this. I don't have a choice. It's like, but there's many choices. You're just not open. You're just not, your bandwidth of awareness of possibilities just hasn't grown yet. So then people make choices based on a very, very narrow amount. It's either, black or white, A or B. And they don't see beyond that. They don't see that itself was just an offer and there's a whole other realm of possibilities. And so a lot of people I find have a ceiling to be able to comprehend this idea that everything's an offer. But the more experience you have, and especially the more experience you have coming from that framework, the more it just proves itself self-evident. So that's like a maxim of, it's not a maxim of law, but it's kind of used in courtrooms where the truth, no, it's in the American Constitution or whatever, right? Like the truth is self-evident. Like you don't have to explain it, tell it. You don't have to, it's just self-evident. So when you do explore that, you find that to be the case. But life will always challenge you to a point where you might think you've got it, and then you're just cruising around like, yeah, everything's an offer and nothing applies to me and I've got a choice. But then life, if you get cocky with it, will give you something where you feel a bit stuck and you've reached your ceiling of comprehension of everything as an offer, and you have to work really, really hard. And usually what that means is letting go of a lot of something. Like you have to sacrifice something to then be able to move to that next realm of possibility. But that sacrifice always turns out to be, I'm so glad I let that go. But in the moment, you're like, oh, I can't let go. This is like dying. So humble. Yeah, you have to. If you don't humble yourself, life will humble you for sure. And but yeah, it's that concept. Everything is an offer is just a concept of natural law. And then the more you explore it, the more you see it's peppered in everything within the laws, quote unquote, which aren't really laws that are in society where you can get prosecuted or persecuted for, down to commercial agreements between people, down to interpersonal agreements still work on these levels, and then your own agreements with yourself and the agreements formed with life itself. It all works by the same principle. So yeah, if people are new to that and they're like, oh, I don't know about that, I'd recommend if you do want to come to that, because if you're willing to go down that path of looking at everything as an offer, you'll find that you have the ability to reach mastery in different levels of your life in this lifetime. But again, with that, you then have to take more responsibility. It can be somewhat of a burden. It won't make things easier, but it will make it right for you in your life. But you also have to choose that, which again just proves that again, that's an offer. Do you want to take that or not? And then you have a choice, you make a decision, you form an agreement. And then with that comes like many other facets. But even if you just start there, you can start looking at it in ways that you can perceive already. And then you, like anything else, you just start to grow and you wait to reach a ceiling or a part that you can't move beyond. Then you want to step outside of that and observe it, like forest for the trees. And then play devil's advocate with yourself. Like, try not to make decisions on it and like, no, this is how it is. That can't be. It's not an offer. Go, okay, this is really overwhelming and I can't see this as an offer right now. So I'm going to take a pause and take a breath. And I'm going to go, how can I see this as an offer? Is there a way that it could be perceived or comprehended that this could be an offer? And that's a very quick way to start, not just with the idea of everything's an offer, but pretty much anything in life, is to then find a way around it really, really quickly. If you're willing to, again, humble yourself and open yourself up and willing to be a child or a rank beginner again in that particular way.
Yeah. And really be able to observe yourself and be able to observe everything from like all different points of view, and ask the question, like you said, ask the question, how could this be an offer, or how can I see this differently? Yeah. So
we jump to conclusions way too quick almost all the time rather than opening up for like possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. So where in your life right now are you humbling yourself to, if you are or not?
Oh yeah, no, all the time. Yeah. So, specifically with, having found the woman that I'm going into union with, which again, that's like different from marriage or having a relationship or like having a, like whatever. It's like there's a lot you have to let go of to be able to do that. A lot you have to be willing to take responsibility for and honor, like in doing that. So, and that takes humbling yourself, especially as a man, that takes humbling yourself in a lot of ways. All ways that are very beneficial to the self. But it's like, it's that. And then also, okay, here's another way, because this way might not seem like it's humbling, but it is. That's the main way to read it, by the way. That's the main thing for me at the moment. But I've always had this love for music, and I've always had people too, they go, oh, you're really good at music, or you should really, and I'm like, yeah, but not really, like this. So humbling yourself sometimes is actually honoring or acknowledging that you do have a gift for something, because the way that you might perceive that otherwise is thinking that it's hugely egoic to think that you're good at something. And especially in Australian culture, it's much better to be like, oh, nah, not really that good, nah, just something I muck around with, that kind of like, nah, mate, nah, that kind of thing.
Totally.
Because we often do that because that's the societal acceptance, and we have huge tall poppy syndrome in Australia. And we literally just hate on people who are like, hey, I'm really great at something and I'd love to share it with you, and I'm really good. Like that, the other side of that is a little bit sickening to healthy people. They're like, well, they're a bit up themselves and they're not actually that good in the first place. And it's like, imagine going around thinking that you're all that. But there's a balance point, which is the humbling point, to accept that you do have a gift for something, and you're probably doing a disservice or a dishonor to it if you choose to keep avoiding it. Like I've chosen to avoid doing anything with music for like ages. But now I'm realizing that I've found a pathway or creating music that's not just going to be like like a self-aggrandizement thing. Like, yeah, I'll just become a rock star and play on stage and just everyone will love it and I'll just have heaps of fans and make heaps of money. Like, it won't be about that. Like, I've found a way that I want to start creating music that will actually be a gift for other people, and not because I think that because people have gone, that thing that you did like this, like just with specific ways of doing music, that really helped me. So it's like, okay, honoring that, realizing I'm dishonoring it by not doing something with it, but they're not going into self-aggrandizement, like I'm such a good musician, or everyone will love this, or I'm going to make this, and Narita, this is a gift. Like, you should be honored that I'm giving you this gift of my music. Yeah, that's going in the other direction. It's a really subtle, fine line in the middle. And it takes humility to realize that it's not that big of a gift. But also, it takes the humility to go, actually, like, avoiding it is not humble. It's like weirdly going in ego in the other way. Like, there's a fine line in the middle. So that's another way I'm working on humbling myself in that way, is accepting that I should do something with that.
Yeah, I really love the way you explain that, and maybe we can have a rock out one day, because I'll sing and you can play guitar. We'll do that. But I just think that's a perfect example, because like everyone gets that, it's such a freaking fine line, isn't it? And it's it's honoring the gift that you were born with or that you developed while you were here. But yeah, it's not going like all the way over that, you're walking around like shit don't stink,
Yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah.
And it's like what I see a lot of people do is they do the pendulum swing really often. So the first thing is it's like there might be a musician or something to that effect, and they're like, yeah, no, I just like, I'll just play music, and it's just, how can you put a price on music, and I just want to play for people and all that, which is going in a way that doesn't really honor or value that it has something of substance. So like, just for people that might not be familiar, in natural law, everything has an innate natural value in that substance. It's measurable, it's tangible, it can be felt at least. So then we have the two worlds, public and private. And private is the living world and it has substance and meaning and value. But then the fiction, which is all like names and entities and corporate fiction and all that, which includes fiat currency, has no inherent value. It has a fixed fictional value, but nothing that's actually created by God or like life. It has no life in it. Like your reflection in the mirror has no life in it. A $20 bill has no life in it, but an ounce of gold has inherent life because it has the frequency of the sun, essentially. Like it's healing even to have on your body. So therefore it has inherent value, whereas put a $20 note on you, it's just going to feel like plastic. And likewise, your reflection or your name or your ID has no inherent value. So a lot of life is moving through the illusion of like, where is substance and where is fiction, and discerning the difference between the two. So we often, like artists will often have this, especially if they're born with a talent, they're kind of like, what? But then they'll go the opposite and they'll just go, no, I need to start valuing myself. So you should pay like huge amounts of money for my stuff. And it's like, you can get why, and it's not necessarily healthier or unhealthier than the overly modest side. But there's definitely a balance point in the middle where it's the balance point is generally found naturally by just engaging with life, and life seems to find that balance point rather than the thinking mind trying to create constructs around it, which almost always creates illusions, which means it's never going to fall into that balance point of natural value, which if you can get into that flow, like currency, like a current in the sea, different currents in different seasons, etc., then it'll flow really, really well. And if it's not flowing really, really well, it's because it's either forced in a overvalued way or it's forced in a way of non-acceptance of an actual value, which again, it's like some people probably aren't even comprehending some of that. And it's because it's such a subtle, fine line. Like explaining to somebody that they're not their name or their reflection in the mirror, some people are like, what are you talking about? Whereas other people are like, oh, actually a light bulb just went on. But that's still not what it really means. They've just now been given a different construct that they can explore to be able to find that for themselves, because it's not in the words, it's not in the construct or the concept. So finding this is just, it's all internal and it's all different for everybody. And for somebody, giving a CD away for free or their music away for free is the true currency. And for another person, it might be making $5 million off of that. And that is the truth. So what's right and true for one individual and their inherent like multitude of value is different from like, that's why we can't affix values on certain things. But then, like I say, like the inversion of that is realizing that there's no one affixed value to anything. So you just go into like the life coaching world and just start charging 20 grand and then make yourself this like aggrandized figure. And then it's just like, well, there's so much of that around, but is what it is.
There is. But, like to your point as well, it's an energy exchange, and what is right for one person might not be right for someone else. Like I love how you always bring it back to each of us on our own individual path, and everyone has their own stories, their own patterns, their own hills to climb and, mountains to, all that sort of stuff. But when we look at the value, like it's so nuanced, and it is so, like we have to be able to, like, and when you can, like, be that observer that can see all the different parts. It's like, I think who was saying it the other day, which being able to stand and see all different parts of everything at once, like being able to see what's the word, Tom? The word, the paradox of it all and that sort of stuff as well. But yeah, so I just went off on a tangent there. But I love using that example as well, and just the value, like bringing it back to natural law and all that sort of stuff. Like, what are you most excited about, or what is most on your heart right now that you just like you're bursting at the seams to want to talk about, if you are?
Oh, that's a weird question because, sorry, not you asked a weird question. I just mean, for me, it's like, it's weird to be able to, because the truth of it is that I don't have a burning desire to talk about anything. Like, I talk because people ask me to. I never just get up and go, all right, I've got something to say and you all need to hear it. Like,
Yeah.
I just haven't been like that.
No.
And I find, but that's me, and it can be different for somebody else. Like, I find things happen the best if and that's my natural state of being as well. My biggest burning desire isn't to speak about anything, it's to become something.
Yeah.
And it's to just keep finding this value that I have within. Keep looking at where there's illusions of like going into like self-aggrandizement, and I'm like, I'm really worth this, and I'm really this, and I'm really that, and just keep moving through that into like the essence of what I really am. And I've had enough experiences now of being able to at least glimpse that, where I'm just like, that's the only path that I'm here for. The rest is just like part of the journey to keep deepening that. And it's such a profound and humbling experience as well. So then hopefully then the deeper I get into that, the more that is reflected in what I do, give to the world, so to speak, as my work. Because the real work I think that we're all here to do, no one ever sees. You don't get recognition for it, you don't get paid for it, none of that. But what happens is the more you deepen into that, the more you will actually offer something of greater value to the world without even having to really try. It's not like you have to advertise and market yourself. And so I'll just give another example, Narita, because I think it might help people who are like on this kind of path, because it can be really confusing at times, and I've been through a lot of it. So one is that as we realize that we're not our name, we're not our identification, and the more we identify with anything, that's the fundamental trap in the slave trap in this world, is identification. That's how you're fined, taxed, moved around, told you can't go here or there or whatever, and decisions made for you. That is by way, the enslavement trap is by way of identification, which starts with the birth certificate and the agreements that are formed through the parental contracts and et cetera, et cetera. That's a whole other side, but just for now, if people aren't familiar with that, it's just, that's where it starts. By the way, the birth certificate isn't bad. Don't worry about that. Don't go trying to burn it and do all these things that people talk about. Just know that it starts there, but you can undo those agreements. So don't worry about that. But it starts there. So then though, what we do is we identify with a lot of other things. I'm a public speaker. I'm a podcaster. I'm a this. I'm a what, but you're not that. So again, that's a self-prison. That's a self-entrapment where we identify with things. So the identity, like our identity, our name, our date of birth, that's our trap into the system, but we trap ourselves. We're slaves to many other things, and they're all through identification. So when we think that our value comes from our identity, well, we're already losing. The very, very overt examples of that most people can just grasp is the highly narcissistic world of like influencers and that on social media these days, where no one really made them that. They make themselves that. Like, I'm an expert in this, I'm a this coach, I'm a that, or like, I'm the world's best this, and I've healed thousands of people, and it's all created from the individual. And you saw this happen when MySpace came out and Facebook and all those things when they started. People were obsessed and went to a great deal of effort to make sure that their avatar was like, this reflects me. Like, it's this color and it's this shade and it's this whatever. And it's like, but that's not you. Like, it's a fundamental missing. Like, there's a huge chasm here between what's really you, like your real true value, the gold that no one can ever take away. It's inherently yours and you. And you just, well, you might not like ignore it because you might not even know it's there, but you'll never find it when you're just projecting outwards that this is how I want to be seen. This is my image. And people are so concerned with that. And yes, to a degree, you need that, because I know that if I dress in stained and shit clothing, people aren't going to take me as seriously as if I wear nicer clothes, for example. So it is a fact of life, but it's, do you identify with that? Or do you realize that that's just a tool, a necessary tool to sustain the living being in order to find and keep developing the real, like what the thing you should really be excited about? So when I said before as well about how, like, people just go, well, I'm just this. And I used to get really angry at other people or just the world because I never had it within me to like self-promote or create an image of myself that was like, yeah, I'm just like this. Just see other people doing it. And I'm like, they don't know anything. Like, they're literally idiots who've created this image of themselves and they're making $1 million a month. Like, what? Like, I used to get infuriated with it because I'm like, I know they're fake. I know that what they're teaching people or saying is inherently like not even true and harmful information, yet they're getting paid millions of dollars. I'm like, how is this allowed to happen in this world? And then you're like, how is pedophilia allowed? How is this allowed? You just start getting angry with stuff. But when you realize like, oh, none of that's my path. So while I'm preoccupied with them and I'm like, well, I'm just going to charge this because they charge that, it's like you're always going to come up with a number that's not indicative of your true value because it's in relation to someone or something else. And everybody knows the expression that comparison is the thief of joy. So if you're basing your life upon somebody else's, yes, there's truth in the idea that you do need to use other things as a framework to help like find your lane. Like, that lane is like a bit bumpy. I don't want that lane, so this is my lane. You need that to a degree, but just don't base everything on that. You got to find your own lane. And the thing is, Narita, why once you're in it, which you're probably finding as well, once you're in it, it doesn't matter that some influencer is out there making 20 grand a day, spruiking like nonsense bullshit with like millions of followers. And you're like, imagine what good for the world that could happen if I had that. That's what I used to think. But I'm like, whoa, but that's not even true. If I had that, like, they're not even ready for some of the stuff. And I'm also, it's a lie to say that I have that value because I don't. If I had it, people would receive it. And not only would they receive it, I wouldn't even need them to because I would have it. So what a lot of people do is they start seeing what's amiss and then thinking that they have the answer or their solution, or if people should listen to me and not them. But that's not true because your unrest and your unhappiness, and this was my experience, so I was this to a T, unrest, unhappiness, unfulfillment was based on the fact that I didn't have true value. What I had to say wasn't true because if it was, I would be in my own stream, drinking from my stream, and I wouldn't need anyone else to drink from it. Why would you want somebody else drinking from your stream in the first place? Which leads back to the expression I use that I found it when I was like 20, that most of us are standing in the clearest of streams and dying of thirst. So I'm like, why would I die of thirst? If I'm in my own stream and it's the clearest of streams and I'm drinking from it, why do I need anyone else to drink from it? You know what I mean? So then I'm like, oh, it's all in here. All right, so I just have to focus on that. Then the deeper I get into that, maybe, just maybe, I'll have something of true value for other people. And whatever comes back as a result will be the right thing and it'll be true and inherent in value and inherent in exchange. Not, well, I have to affix a like $50,000 price on this because Anthony Robbins does and he's this and I don't like it. Like that's how I used to be. And it's so funny to think now because at the time I thought I was so right. I was like, everyone else is wrong. I'm right. I have the real value because I know this about viruses and I know this about law and you don't know that. So I should be getting paid this. And it's like, none of that was true. So that's the humbling to find your, and then like I say, have I found it? No, but I've glimpsed it enough where I'm like, and I forget often enough because I will see other people doing really well. I'm like, I'm 40, I'll be 44 this year. I don't own a house. Like, I don't have stuff that people who are doing stupid shit, by my judgment, have, or I'm like, fuck, well, what would I be able to do if I had that? So then I'm like, why am I comparing myself? That's not my path. That's not my journey. Honor, like Tom, honor your journey and you will have, that will come when it's meant to come, but it won't if you don't honor your journey. So stay in your lane. That again, that's the humbling yourself. Like, stay in your lane and just let life be. If you want a life, life will honor you. And I've experienced that enough times to know that is a fundamental truth as well. And it's only when I forget that doesn't seem true. But then I have to remember, and then it's like, oh yeah, whoops. It's this never leaves me, but I can forget it.
Yeah. And you'd never change anything for what you know, your innate wisdom and everything you've learned, would you?
No. There's definitely things that I don't want to go through again.
Yeah.
But I just feel that I've learned those lessons and it was hard and stuff. And like some people go, I don't have any regrets. I do it all again. And I don't have any regrets either, but I would definitely choose differently with, if you want to call it wisdom, with the wisdom I've accrued from those experiences. That wisdom should allow you to go, I don't want to do that again. I think when people say, I would do it all again, I'm like, did you get the wisdom from that? Because it sounds like you didn't. And I'm not saying they didn't, but to me, it sounds like they didn't. Because there's certain things in life I'm like, I don't want to go through that again. But I'm glad that I did. And yeah, I wouldn't change it, but I also wouldn't do it again. I'd do it different.
Oh, it's so funny that you say that, because that's exactly how I feel. Like that, I wouldn't want to, like, I don't have the regrets, I guess, but I would do it differently with the wisdom that I have now. Absolutely, there's different things, like, and that's just how you learn, though. That's, you know, you fall on your face, or you be a bit of a dickhead one time, or you just say the wrong thing, or you help in a different way, and you wish you could have done it different, and you will next time. And then that's how you learn, isn't it? Like through failure or learning or mistakes, like those are the things that build us and make us who we are. And if we're not doing that, then we're probably doing something wrong, because we'll be living in a bubble. And we're going to make mistakes probably like all the time, aren't we?
Yeah, still, I get even people that I look up to that are like a lot older than me and like actually have you can see they're tapped in, like they're weirdly, stupidly psychic and just can see stuff and do stuff, like move energy around, and I'm like, geez, like how do you do that? And even then, they're still, like, you see them making mistakes all the time, even stuff that, like, I've said some things to people like that, and they're like, oh, thanks. Like, I've just taught them something. I'm like, what am I compared to you? And I literally just taught you the simplest of things. So, well, no one ever, not that I've ever experienced, maybe it's possible, but I just have never experienced anyone that's like there, even if they're twice my age and like 1,000 times as wise or whatever you want to call it. They're still not there. So like, it's really, again, humbling to realize that you're always going to make mistakes. You're never going to be right about everything. And that's okay. Like, it's just, the more you can embrace that, the better things will be. And not only for yourself, but for those around you as well. There's nothing worse than being around people that just are so sure they're right about everything. And it's not good for others. Like, it's so, people feel accepted more. I've learned this a lot too. People feel far more accepted and are far more willing to hear something that you have to say if you just know that you're not right about everything and that whatever they're doing is okay as well. Like, if you're accepting of things, it's just like, it's the way to go for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Acceptance is huge, isn't it? Like in all, like, just, I mean, accepting things that you've been through, accepting that you don't have it all right. Like, just so many different, like, it plays, I can't remember what you were saying before, but that popped in as well, like acceptance. And then you were saying something else now, I can't remember. But yeah, drop in if you've got anything to add to that acceptance.
Oh, well, yeah, 100%. But acceptance needs to lead to something, because, again, otherwise it could be a one-way ticket to the bypassing will, where you just accept everything and never do anything.
Yeah.
So otherwise you're just like, well, I accept the things that have happened to me, so I'm just going to take this line of cocaine, and then I'll just accept that I'm doing cocaine. And I'll just accept that, oh, shit, I didn't really do much today, but I accept that and I'll just do more cocaine. It's like, that's not, you have to do something with the acceptance to move through, and really not, like, whatever your behaviors are today, for example, you can have an acceptance as to what led to that, but I don't think you should accept everything insofar as who you are.
Yeah.
But again, it's not wrong to not.
Yeah.
So, I accept other people. I should say that. I accept other people for, if they do cocaine every day or whatever, and they just bypass everything and they're making $1 million in the process, I accept them and I accept that. But I'm like, there's something in me that doesn't resonate with that. So I don't accept that element of laziness in myself. Because what we see in others somewhere in ourselves, I don't accept that level of ego in myself. I don't accept, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I intend to keep growing, but I do accept what I've been through, and I accept, like, the mistakes that I do make and will continue to make. But I intend with my will to not be those things, to transcend those things.
Yeah, I love that. And then, like you said as well, intent, it's our intention each day, what we want to bring to the table of life, our life, and how we want to show up in the world, isn't it?
yeah, and we have choice in that like everything's an offer, and we have full choice in that. And again, that comes with full responsibility, but that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Tom, I could actually talk to you all day. You're just a bloody champion. I love listening to your wisdom and everything that you have to share. I had a couple of things written down, but I feel like we've just organically gone to where we needed to go. Is there anything else on your heart that you want to share with everyone today?
Well, I mean, there's nothing that's really, I honestly don't feel like I have anything to say that's specifically like, oh, people need to hear something. Like, it's just, if I can say anything, it's just that, like, if you can find that part in yourself, or even just have the desire to find that part in yourself that is like uniquely yours, it's just like like I refer to it, because I've heard others refer to it as your essence, then like there's nothing really more than that. And it's the simplest thing, but it's so simple that most people overlook it. Like, nah, it's got to be harder than that. Like, you got to work harder than that, but it's kind of not. And I think a lot of us get caught up in the construct of doing, and we've got to do more. But I just really like the idea of being more. And in the Tao, which is a whole book of basically paradoxes, it's like there's action through non-action. And it's kind of like, what do you mean? Like, how can you do action through non-action? Like, have you ever seen the movie, what's it called? It's not There's Something About Mary, Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Have you ever seen that?
Oh, maybe. I know the movie, but yeah.
Oh, it's so funny. It's got Russell Brand in it, and the main actor, I think, is Paul Rudd.
Are they on an island or something?
Yeah. Goes to Hawaii. So basically, this chick breaks up with him. He's like distraught. She goes to this island to just get away. I think it's Hawaii, and then he decides he's going to go there as well. And anyway, it's a funny movie, but there's this one scene where he's trying to learn how to surf because he sees Russell Brand out surfing. He's like, dude, that looks like amazing. I want to learn how to surf. So he hires a surf instructor, and the surf instructor just goes, all right, show me your pop-up. So he's on the sand on the board, and he's like, all right, jump up. So he goes, Paul Rudd's laying on the board, and he just jumps up to his feet, and he goes, no, you're doing too much. You're doing too much. Do less. So he goes, do it again. And he jumps to his feet, and he's like, no, you're still doing too much. Like, do less. So he starts to look confused and gets a bit like stiff. And he goes like, sort of goes to get up, and he goes, you're still doing too much. Do less. So he just lays there still. And it's just like, no, you got to do something. It's just kind of like, it's such a well done scene because it's poking. There's so much meaning in that. But the idea of action through non-action means, like, a quote that I like is be more, do less, or do less, be more. Or like more being and less doing, because what's happening is when we're in do mode and we're obsessed with what can I do and how much am I doing, I need to do more, like this fundamental feeling like we're not enough that's generally instilled in childhood, then we end up just doing, but that's all based on somebody else's construct, which means we've left ourselves and we're never embodied. It's never from us. It's based on somebody else's judgment or somebody else's idea of what should be done. And we leave ourselves to meet some other construct, which is a spell or an illusion or an energy harvester, or like any other way you want to look at that. None of it helps you. So by being more, what happens is we end up doing less action out there to become more. And through becoming more, everything that we do then, every thought, every word, every action, big or small, becomes an extension of our connection to our source, not some other offer. Because there's again a maxim in law that what you create, you own. So whoever created those constructs, those judgments, those things that we're trying to act within that framework, we own none of it. Someone or some other energy owns that entire framework. So therefore, all our energy, our valuable currency, is in somebody else's framework or some other thing's framework from all levels of entities that aren't even in physical human form.
Yeah.
So when we're like, oh, wait, I'm here to be my part of that, and then we re-embody, which is, I believe, what the Bible talks about as dominion. Well, we focus on being, and then we actually feel who and what we are. And then the slightest, most imperceptible breath that we take in that state is 1 billion times, to use, I don't know, like hyperbole, but 1 billion times more effective than the greatest, most outlandish action based on some other judgment, expectation, construct, or anything. And a lot of people, as you get more into that, I should mention this as well, as you get more into that, you will be faced with demons who will try to break you out of that. You're not doing enough. What are you doing? Do this. Like, I'm doing this, you do that. And you're here going, do I have enough actual inner knowing of this yet to be able to even articulate to them that they're not even in their own body. They're getting the spell that is running through that original construct is now running through them, yelling at you. Are you strong enough yet to just go, okay, I'm still going to be more. You go and do whatever you're doing. Let me be more. Meanwhile, you'll do something that like can immeasurably change their life and value, and they won't even perceive it. But then the path of that is being okay and accepting that as well.
Yeah.
That the deeper you go into that, the less you'll get acknowledgement, recognition, money, and all those things, but you'll get where it really counts in this world that is the expression in the world but not of the world. Like all of that doing is of the world. But when you can be in it, you're like in a place that like other people won't necessarily even know exists, but you got to have enough like strength to be able to keep walking that path, which can actually get harder before it gets easier in many ways, because you, like I said, the world will set up many demons to try to trick you as an offer through illusion with no power but a lot of influence to go, oh no, I'm starting to feel like I'm letting him down or something, so I'll leave myself and jump back into that construct to appease that what is essentially a demon. That's not their thought. That's not their heart. That's not their emotion. That's nothing to do with what's really them. But it's really coming out of their face and their expression really strongly, which can have great influence on you if you don't yet have enough of a inner, like, just feeling of, no, this is being. And they'll be helped the more I can do this. The more I go in there and try to help them with this hole that they're digging to nowhere, that's actually going to do worse for them, not better. And it's like, again, it's so subtle, but it's if people can comprehend that, it's like so powerful, but also pretty difficult.
Yeah. Oh, it is so freaking powerful. It is. And just that, a nutshell, it comes back to just being you and being who you are and trusting in your knowing. And it is like a muscle though, isn't it? Because you slowly build it over time, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah. And you have to be tested. You have to probably fail many times.
Yeah.
You have to not get down on yourself where you're like, I gave my energy away again. Like, it does happen. I still give mine away. Like, every day something will happen where I'll appease some other offer from like what I know is not somebody's essence. It's not their heart. It's like this entity part running them and that. And I'll still do it. And I'm like, man, you teach this stuff. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And then I'll be like, wait, hang on, just accept where you're at. Like, and I have to go through that process myself a lot. But each time I get more into being, less into doing. And weirdly, more stuff is actually getting done the more that I'm into being and less into doing. Because then the action is right action. It's just like, it has a proper focus and a proper tangible. It's like something tangible is created, even just with the thought that I'm imagining that I'm creating in myself before it's created in the rest of the world for other people to see. It already has more just tangible value, something that can be felt.
Yeah. And I love that you take that time to reflect. You're very self-reflective as well. And it's just, I mean, when you are faced with those things each day, because we are tested, that's how we build our internal muscles, isn't it? And so we look at, okay, oh shit, I could have done that better. Or yeah, I gave my power away there. Like, but that's how you, just like you said, that's how we grow and that's how we become more of who we are, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a constant journey. And like I said, even those people that I look up to, which isn't many people, but those people, actually, when I say that, like, I see everyone as my teacher, by the way. I'm not like, well, I know this, so I don't look up to anyone. Like, it's people, it's not what people know or how nice they are. It's the people that I've seen that actually are doing something that's like more than like what most people will be able to do in this lifetime. And they still forget a lot as well. So it's like, it's cool.
Yeah. It's part of being human, let's be honest. Yeah. Oh, far out. Well, Tom, I've just absolutely freaking loved chatting with you. How can people find you, even find you perhaps? Where's the best places for them to tap into all your stuff?
So social media is all under tombarnett.tv on Instagram and Telegram. Facebook's just my name. And I have a YouTube channel, but I don't know what that's called at the moment, but I have to sort that YouTube thing out. But anyway, that's where all the stuff is that I just share ideas. But if you really want to get like deeper into the, like, actually learn this as a path, that's why we have the Living Free Movement. So livingfreemovement.org. And that's $200 for a year, which gets you access to the entire catalog, which would take you more than a year to get through if you looked at it every day, of webinars, resources, everything that's in there to help you really get to know this stuff, as well as a community that's super supportive. And that doesn't even include all the current and future webinars and everything that we're constantly creating. So there's like way more than the sum of its parts in there. It's like we only price it as that so that we can let people not have money as an issue to join. Like we could charge way more, but we just choose not to. And then if you want to join my mailing list, that's at my website, tombarnett.tv. And it's a good idea to join the mailing list because all the other things that I start releasing in that will generally go out through there, because oftentimes social media goes down because I'm shadow banned a lot and what have you. So they're the main ways.
Yeah, awesome. So definitely join the mailing list. People at home, and I just want to, while I'm talking to the people at home, you at home, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have loved this episode as much as I have, and I hope you have too, Tom. I'm so grateful for you spending some time with us today. And I'm looking forward to seeing what else comes out. And I got to say too, like I'm a Living Free Movement member, and there is like a plethora of information in there. So if you want to, and there's so many different topics as well. And like you said, the community is just awesome. So yeah, thank you for everything that you do and just for being you, Tom.
Thanks, Rita. I had a great time. Thanks for having me.
No, pleasure.